But after a very short period of time, those two other opposition political parties, because KANU had won the elections and formed the government, and the two other parties were in the opposition, they were folded up and joined KANU. And KANU remained the only political party. However, in 1966, an opposition party was formed called the Kenya People's Union. It survived for 3 years, and it was banned by the government in 1969. And the leadership of the party were arrested. From that time onwards, Kenya remained a de facto single-party dictatorship from 1969 to 1982. In 1982, when some of us wanted to form a political party, the regime then went to Parliament and introduced a law to make the country a single party. A constitutional amendment which is known as Section 2A that made it illegal to form any other political party. So from 1982, it remained literally a single party dictatorship. But that is the reason why in that same year there was a coup attempt which did not succeed in Nairobi. Mukarunganga, people like Professor Katama Mukangi, Professor William Mutunga, Akongo, quite a number of university lecturers were arrested and detained, and the others, Koigo Amwere, George Anyona, were taken to political detention. So this situation persisted. And some of us were arrested in that year, 1982, after the coup attempt, and taken to political detention. And we stayed there for 6 years. Then in 1988, KANU brought an amendment to his laws, saying that they are bringing what they call direct democracy, where there was a nomination process where people were lining up behind the candidates, and then the returning officer would count the voters who were lined up behind the candidates without having to go to the ballot. That process was abused, and many popular candidates were rigged at that real proper election in 1988. This now added momentum and anger to the movement for change. Among those people who had been rigged out were the late Kenneth Matiba and Charles Rubia. So, come 1990, by that time I had been to detention 2 times. They said that Kenya, the time had come for Kenya to become a multi-party. That Kenyans wanted a multi-party system of government. Cohesive enough to become multi-party. It would take another 100 years before Kenya became a multi-party system. So these were daydreamers. The 3 former members of parliament. And in the process, of course, a number of very inflammatory statements were made, even by some today politicians who are talking about the arranged the meeting, and then we met again. They met again with Mr. Rubia, the decision was taken that they would be supported. And at the same time, they sent the goons to Matiba's home the following day to attack his family. Matiba's wife was very badly wounded in Nairobi hospital when we went to see her. After that, we, myself and Kenneth Matiba and Charles Rubia made a statement which we said that year, 1990, 7th of July 1990. So after making that statement, we then now went on to mobilize for the meeting at Kamkunji. But then, of course, the police officers came to block us from meeting each other. They were stationed in my office at Ajib House, Matiba's office, up there on Koinange Street, and Rubia's office. And Matiba and Rubia were arrested and taken to detention. On that same night, they arrested Gitobi Manyara, they arrested John, Paul Mwite went into hiding, Kamau Korea ran into American Embassy and sought refuge. And that's how it was. But the International Commission of Jurists came up and made a very powerful lobby. Hamenwa and Manyara, and were released. As we remained in detention. And as you know, Rubia is the one who was falsely affected. He got a very serious infection, was taken to hospital. Eventually, he lost his vocal cords and was released. Matiba suffered a stroke in the detention and was removed and eventually brought to Nairobi hospital, after which she was then taken to London for treatment. That completely undermined his health permanently. And these two people eventually died because of, but because of the injuries they sustained while in detention. Many people, but in spite of our being detained, the Kenyan people braved it and came out in numbers to go to Kamkunji on the 7th of July, 9th time. So then, after we came out of detention, then Ford was formed. We formed Ford. After forming Ford, we get pressed and said we were going back to Kamkunji. Eventually, when I was taken again, I was moved away from here and taken into exile. But our people braved it and managed to march all the way into Kamkunji. And you see the photograph in front page of Nation there today. You can see Martin Chikuku, James Orengo, Anyang Nyongo, Masinde Muliro in the back of that truck getting up to Kamkunji. That was not on Saba, that was on the 16th of November 1991. But it's still the Kamkunji. That's why Kamkunji is very historical for the second liberation of this country. And that's why we celebrate Saba. The fateful day on which Kenya's struggle for multi-party democracy took the most decisive turn is iconic and historical. It's a day rivaled only but the present day Mashujaa Day, previously Kenyatta Day, that celebrates the arrest and detention of the freedom fighters jointly called the Kapenguria Six. It is regrettable that the recognition and remembrance of Saba has not been consistent in its short period history of 35 years. One moment it is important. The next moment it is not. On this 35th anniversary of Saba, we decided to remember and to set the record straight on its significance, what it was and is, and what we ought to do with the foundation it laid for the country. Before that day, some patriotic Kenyans had demanded the repeal of Section 2A of the Constitution. A number of people, including Kenneth Matiba, Raila Odinga, Mohamed Ibrahim, Toby Manyara, John Haminwa, and Charles Robia, among others, were arrested and detained. It is quite unfortunate that some of the people we were fighting then and who sanctioned those arrests are trying to hide behind Saba to advance their political fortunes. Some of them are alive today and now are masquerading as liberators. On the fateful day, July 7th, 1990, thousands of Kenyans tried to gather at the historic Kamkunji grounds to take stock of the past, the state of the nation, and chart a path of freedom forward. We decided that Saba would be a march for political freedom and liberty, freedom of association, freedom of movement, freedom of expression, and a new democratic constitution founded on multipartyism. Kenyans wanted a fulfillment of the Kenyan dream, which was eradication of poverty, ignorance, disease, and good governance. That clarity of mission is what made Saba different from all other confrontations with the Moi Kanu one-party state. Saba, therefore, was and still is about the sacred and historic grounds of Kamkunji. It was not and is not just another routine street protest in Nairobi or any other town. At Kamkunji is where they held the last KAU, Kenya Africa Union meeting in 1952. It is where Kanu's first rally was also held. It was also where the first Ford meeting was held after registration. Saba had a singular purpose: to the repeal of Section 2A of the Constitution and allow multi-party democracy in Kenya. Saba had clear and known national conveners: Kenneth Matiba, Charles Robia, and yours truly, Raila Odinga. It was what gave birth to a bigger and powerful forum for the restoration of democracy, Ford. Ford had a known nationally inclusive leadership: Jaramogi Oginga Odinga, Philip Gachoka, Ahmed Bamariz, Salim Damwe, Asinde Muliro, George Ndenge, Kenneth Matida, Charles Robia, among others. Saba was inclusive, democratic, and intergenerational. The old, the young, people in and out of the government, professionals, academics, trade unionists, civil society, women groups, and religious groups. All of them found their voice in what it stood for: a people's struggle for good governance, freedom, and equal opportunity for all. It was not one group against the entire nation. It was not community against that community, or of this age against that age. The movement stood for a peaceful and constitutional change of guard. That is the reason it focused singularly on amendment and later on the overhaul of the Constitution. These features are what made Saba succeed. A year after the march, on December 2nd, 1991, President Moi capitulated. Section 2A of the Constitution was removed. Multipartyism was reinstated. We achieved our core aim, which was to return Kenya to multipartyism. Today, we have more parties than one could imagine then. That single amendment paved the way for the complete overhaul of the Constitution and the birth in 2010 of a new Constitution that came with provisions for fundamental freedoms and liberties that our citizens enjoy today. It is clear that many of the ideals espoused by the dreamers behind Saba have become part of the national aspiration. We are a better nation because Saba happened. We have a duty and a responsibility to honor the men and women who dared to dream and to turn out at a time of great peril to themselves and their families. 35 years later, the country is grappling with a new wave of unrest and political activism. The question we have to ask ourselves is, do we go from here? Do we embrace chaos or a coming together of minds and the country? As a living architect of the events leading to the Saba, I choose a coming together of minds and the country in the interest of the country. I long fought for its progress, stability, and prosperity. The most important struggle taking shape in our country today is the struggle for good governance, economic opportunity, and equality. The biggest challenge facing Kenya today and into the foreseeable future is how to expand economic opportunity and lift particularly young Kenyans out of poverty, exclusion, and unemployment. Kenyans are yearning for programs and leaders that prioritize economic inclusivity, social justice, and political freedom. There is no doubt that the country is yearning for legislation that makes our institutions more responsive, programs that ensure adequate funding for services that touch wananchi, changes that make our judiciary free, efficient and progressive, measures that make the executive more accountable and efficient. We must end impunity and corruption within our three arms of government. Our leaders must become modest, ethical, humble, and accountable. What is to be done? What is to be done? I propose an inclusive, intergenerational, national conclave to hear our people across all divides and come up with irreducible reforms and changes necessary to take the country forward. I propose that the country urgently returns to the agenda of comprehensive police reforms, focusing on enhancing accountability, transparency, and improving the police-to-people relationship. Your rogue police force that shoots people with impunity. And this is a force that we inherited from the colonialists. It has not been reformed to become a people's defender, a people's servant. I propose that the conclave I envisage comes up with better and sustainable ways for addressing transparency, accountability, and impunity, especially with regard to corruption, and ensuring that leaders are held accountable for their actions. I propose that the forum comes up with a comprehensive and sustainable strategy for addressing youth unemployment and expansion of opportunities for youth in the formal and informal sectors. Such a national conclave must have clear terms of reference and be populated and helmed by the most serious and sober minds in our nation. The proceeds of the national dialogue be subjected to a referendum. I rest my case. Thank you. Long live.
Maybe one protests. Secondly, you have said that where do we go from here? You have a close arrangement or working formula with the current president. What have you advised him? Because the country appears to be teetering towards its on the brink of precipice, so to speak. So what have you said? What have you advised the president? Because it appears the country is being turned into a police state, or what you can say it is teetering towards a failed state.
I've talked for a long time about police reforms. Not just this time, not with regard to this regime. In the regime before it, even one before that other regime. I've said that, we inherited a colonial police force. And as you know, the colonial system, colonialism, was meant to rule the natives. It was not a people-friendly government. So what should have happened was to democratize this police force, reform it so that it becomes a service, not a force. It is not enough to just change the words. That is from a force to a service. You must take measures to ensure that it's really a service, not a force. And this has not happened in our country. I've given examples of where it has happened. For example, in Tanzania. And you see a police force which are people friendly and also not trigger happy. About the ministry you're talking about, I said it was totally out of order. And he apologized to me. And he apologized to me and to the people. And he said the day before yesterday that police should handle people with care. So, yeah. Okay.
Just fine. Just one.
No,
just to say.
let's end there.
Okay.
No, just.
Oh, okay, thank you. I just wanted to know and find out. My name is Seto Lale from Citizen TV. Your proposals, as you put them, are there also the thoughts being shared by the president towards this, and what happens if this particular proposal is not taken into account?
Well, I've addressed the nation, and the president is part of the nation. And ask him, it applies to him as much as it applies to the other people. So I'm not partisan in any way. This is a proposal that is coming to me and from my party also, the ODM. This is our stand as a party. Okay? Thank you.
Nishike horizontally sasa.
Ndani vizuri. Nenda kuloza kama madamu hivi sasa. Ndio atakuwa na dance. Kale kaanza na zoom, this up front is zoom. They got over there like
It's for support, yeah.
it's just
2 days.
put it back again. Yeah, sasa mtu amebebwa. Kileto.
Uko ndani.
Kaja akaiko hapa chini.
Nasikia Raila na Mseveni.
Unaongea?
Sinaona sana.
Wewe modo. Umekuwa tao. Umekuwa
Dum.
upigwa. Wewe
Hakuna kitu tao.
ndio anasema tuende chini.
Anasema tuende chini.
No, life na kati.
Waangushe live shot.
Nilikuwa nafikiria kwa